Our ancestral worldview sees reality as a world of forces rather than a world of things. The force which you are or belong to can be shared between you and specific animals. And though you and the animal are separate or manifest separately as two different things, you and it are locked in rhythm by a single force or frequency, which is you. This relationship is comparable to the ripples after a splash on a still surface of water. Each ripple stands at its own and appears to an individual as a separate thing from the other ripple, but moves in rhythm with the other ripples, as all are linked by the single force created by the impact and the energy it sends across the body of water. In ancestral thoughts, your chi is the spark of divinity that brings you into reality, and your eke is that spark manifested into reality. While eke alludes to the individual as a parcel of creation, there is a larger universal body an individual moves through creation with, and this can include that single animal. For many, more than one animal, and for others, no animal at all. Forces, spirits, ancestor guides, trees, Abara, Arushi, natural features, and even animals that you are connected to are known as Ndichi or Ndimo, those who are one with your chi or your spirit people. This also includes the individual you reincarnate from, whom you share the same agun with. And for some, this can include spirits such as the Obanje, a marine spirit which rides your wave of existence into creation, often causing premature death, or a preset of behaviors such as artistic fixation, rebelliousness, hedonistic traits, and great talents in creative spaces. I've done a video on the Obanje, so if you're interested, the link is below. Eke not only represents you as a single part of creation, or your physical corporal self, but many of the things that follow you, your wider spiritual sphere. This includes ancestors who may choose to follow you, animals that you are linked with, the individual you reincarnate from, your family, your future, and your spiritual endowments or situation, including various spiritual entitlements that you may have, such as an ofo, or in this case a spiritual ofo, which differs from the physical one, and I'll explain this shortly. These facets and many more are things that you share a force with, or things you enter creation as and with, the different facets of your spiritual and physical world that you share a frequency with. If we return to the analogy of the ripples on the lake, each ripple is separate from the next, but in rhythm with each other, and ultimately reflections of the same initial impact or phenomena. This is because they have a shared force relationship. In the world of forces, they are one, but there are limitations to our own observations as people. The fact that we can only see the effects of the force moving through water, which in this case are the ripples, rather than the singular force itself, is a result of our inability to see force or the limitations of our perception as people. But in lieu of this inability, we can still see each ripple. And this may cause us to believe that each ripple is a separate phenomenon. An ancestral thoughts, an individual, the person they reincarnate from, their ancestors, and the forces they are linked to are a single force moving through space and time. But limits in our observational capacity makes us see each of these things as distinct from the other, much like the singular ripples on a surface of water. But for the sake of today's video, we're going to focus on animals that are linked to individuals on a spiritual level. But if you're interested in knowing more or understanding more about an individual's full spiritual body, one of the methods for uncovering this is Afa, or divination. And if you're interested in a video on Afa, which will break down this full body and how it is discovered and how it is read, comment below. Before I go further, I want to ask a question. Are there any animals that you believe you may have a connection to? Are there any animals that appear in your dreams or animals that you feel close to? I'll share my own animal dream story towards the middle of the video, but if you have one, comment below. By the end of the video, you should have a better idea of how our ancestors interpreted this connection between people and animals, especially ones that appear in dreams. Everything pertaining to how your chi manifests into reality is your eke. In the creation of all things, there is a chi, which itself is intention. And then this intention breaks into reality and manifests as eke. In ancestral metaphysics, the chi is an unmanifest intention, making the eke its manifestation. In my video Eke Explained, I again return to the example of the ripples on the lake. To explain the relationship between chi and eke, the intention to create the ripples is the chi. And once that intention is created within the mind of a person, changes begin to take effect. There may be a series of thoughts, which then become a feeling or a series of feelings. This feeling can lead to an action, which may be picking up the stone, and this then leads to throwing the stone into the lake and then causing the ripples. And then finally, all of the things in nature affected by this action or series of actions are all factored into how that chi or that initial intention manifested itself into reality. It is important to note that the chi begins and ends with the intention, and everything after that is classified as eke, or the spiraling of the chi into reality. As in Igbo Cosmology, eke is represented by the spiral, which is also the symbol for akaraka, itself literally meaning the etchings on your palm, but as a whole meaning that greater spiritual body I spoke of earlier, as well as your future, or how your life is going to pan out ultimately, which can all be read with afa, or divination. I have a video explaining Eke called Ne Chukwu Explained, how Eke created the universe. So if you're interested, the link is below. Another method for uncovering your full spiritual body is in the art form of Uli, in particular if you manifest it into reality as a woman. Uli is an artistic writing and decorative practice used by matrons and young women to beautify themselves and each other, as well as decorating homes and items and sending shorthand messages back and forth. Uli as a form of writing is often used to title things, or tattoo messages about an individual onto her body, or on her belongings and artistic creations. While most Uli is done in the casual form, Uli itself represents a form of Igbo or trance divination, done by an Ezenwai. When an Ezenwai who is adept in Uli performs Igbo or enters a state of trance, it allows her to see lines, symbols, and designs written all over a woman's body, which are part and parcel of her eke. These lines are only visible to the adept, but some are visible to all people who have sight. The ones visible to most people are the lines on the palm, which are again the akaraka. For this reason, eke is associated with divination and an understanding of the future, full corpus of a person's aura or spiritual self, which explains why both share the spiral as their symbol. These lines and symbols are traced on a woman's body to reveal her chi, and in turn makes her ritualistically enhanced, with the full powers of her Omomo activated while the Uli is being worn. The Omomo is the manifesting, creative energy that all people have, but it's most potent in women, as it is their seat of power and ability in the world, the way the Ikenga, or one's kinetic, physical, and spiritual energy, is the seat of a man's power on earth. The Omumu also dictates a woman's ability to attract, and thus Uli is used to enhance the beauty and magnetism of a woman, as the ritual form is typically done before marriage, or for the day of marriage itself. In connection to Uli, Eke, the divine feminine, is also known as Uli Derua, or the Uli which writes the world. The connection between Eke and lines, or Uli Derua, also lends to the position of the spider in the pantheon of Igbo cosmology. In ancestral mythology, our ancestors spoke of the world or the universe being covered by a spider's web, a web itself being ever woven by Udide or Ududo or Kwanka, the galactic spider that is ever covering existence in its unfinished ogodo or cloth, as a means of representing the expansion or ever-expanding nature of the universe. And again, alluding back to the spiral, as the spider's web is woven in a spiral pattern. And therefore, because Eke is connected to how an individual's life will pan out, these readings can reveal who you reincarnate from and answer questions that you may have about the circumstances of your life and health, messages from those on the other side. And for the sake of this particular subject, these readings can also reveal animals that you are connected to. And these animals will not only give you clues about the nature of your chi, but also unveil the meaning of many of the symbols in your own dreams, or why certain animals play certain roles in your life. The animals you are connected to, as ripples within that wave that is you, are also a part of you. In life, these particular animals will have a resonance with you. When individuals who know you dream, they may see this animal, but for some reason have a feeling that it's actually you. You may dream, see an animal, but know that it's somebody else or somebody that you know, or somehow an allusion to a person who's trying to communicate with you, both living and non-living. Those who are highly adept in our ancestral systems are said to be able to connect to these animals on a higher level. They can develop a singularity with the animal, which then allows them to feel what the animal is feeling. and think its thoughts. Adepts are also able to communicate on an astral level with each other in the form of these animals, or send the inadept messages through animals as their messengers. From this understanding, one can get a greater grasp of how the python is a messenger for Anna, the earth, for example, as her force can use the python to communicate physically or in dreams, since the python is one ripple in a wave shared with Anna. Understanding the Abara and what animals they are connected to will tell you a lot about the animals you see in dreams. I personally remember when my family dog, or my last family dog, passed away. I had a dream where I was in a living room. Baby alligator, like an albino baby alligator, started chasing me. Our family dog was named Marley. He was a proud black puggle. So, so it was really strange to me that I knew that this albino baby alligator was him. Marley was extremely rambunctious, and the alligator was the same. Like once both of them got excited, they were completely out of control. And that's how it was going to be for the rest of forever until they fell asleep. So I was worried that now that Marley was an alligator in my dream, that he wasn't aware he was an alligator and might try to accidentally bite off one of my limbs thinking he had a little dog jaw like before. So I jumped, as the alligator was running towards me, I jumped on the couch because for some reason I thought the alligator couldn't get up there. And as the dream went on more and more, I realized that the alligator was Marley. So initially I had a feeling, but as time went in the dream, it became absolutely clear that this was the dog. But the more I would realize that the alligator was Marley, the more I felt myself waking up or snapping out of the dream. So I don't know if this ever happens to you in dreams, but I try to ignore the realization so that I can stay in the moment a little longer. After a while, I couldn't fight it, and it became obvious that this was Marley, so I stopped looking at the alligator, but I felt or knew that it was doing a bunch of backflips. Now, usually when Marley has this level of energy or excitement, he's letting you know that he's very happy or that whatever is going on at the moment is exciting him. After a while of doing the backflips, I sensed that the alligator was no longer an alligator. It was fully Marley. It was fully my dog. And at that point, I woke up. I took it as Marley showing me that wherever he was very happy. And that our little moment of interacting in the afterlife made him even happier, as it made me very happy. Now, this was about, I want to say, 2 weeks after his death. And I think that was the final moment where I finally had peace about his passing. But anyways, yeah, back to the video. Like an Abara, you may share your force with multiple animals, or no animal at all. In life, it is said that one's animal can never harm them, and in turn, they can never harm that animal. The animal can also be their saving grace in times of distress, and they themselves may be that for the animal when possible. Attributes of that animal's nature will also reflect on your own. This symbiotic relationship with the animal extends beyond individuals. Communities can also have connections to specific animals, and often do, as do family, for a similar reason which I'll explain soon. On a community level, this connection manifests itself as a community totem, which is often a manifestation of the community's main Abara, but sometimes this isn't the case at all. Very often, it's somewhere between. From the onset of a community's creation, certain animals will be linked to the chi of that community or the land that they're on. At times, it is the animal linked to the community's founder. Sometimes it's an existential reflection of the community itself. And often this connection is chosen to honor an animal that has proven itself worthy of a hero's praise. Often these three reasons blur, and sometimes it's difficult to tell whether the animal is chosen or it's acknowledged for revealing itself. But once this honor is bestowed onto an animal, acknowledged by the community, a multi-generational culture of gratitude towards that animal is developed to honor it for its actions or its place in the community's fabric. The following are a few animals in this realm, the different communities that acknowledge and honor them, as well as the stories which made this honor permanent. For the people of Newi, the relationship between them and Ewi, the rabbit, is one of unending gratitude and respect. This gratitude also lends itself in the naming of the community itself, Newi, or Mother Rabbit. For if it wasn't for the rabbit, the Newi people may not exist as we know them today. In the history of the Newi people, there was a great and overwhelming invasion in the founding days of the community. This was the era of the slave trade, where heavily armed communities raided weaker communities on a common and frequent basis. poaching communities for human spoils, and locking Igbo land in a 300-year spell of war. In the heat of this era, a young, weaker Newi was under attack. As the overwhelming force of invaders approached, the Newi people ran short of options. Short of physical strength, they sought the spiritual option instead. A dibia was summoned by the people to prepare a charm for the protection of the land, something that could overpower a superior force and save the Newi people from their doom. After weighing his options, the dibia devised something different. In the face of an overwhelming force, the doctor turned to the rabbit. On that day, the dibia transformed himself into Ewi, the rabbit. The rabbit then went to the fringes of the town with its soft, small footprints. Step by step, the rabbit began to cover the footprints of the town's people. Step by step, foot against sand, until the invaders reached the town. The invaders looked upon the town and saw something they never expected. The town they came to ambush. The town where they would find their human spoils, pillage and enslave the defenseless, was empty. But not only was it empty, on all of its trails and paths, there was no evidence of human life. No human footprints, no signs of movement, no signs of activity, just the small, soft prints of the Ewi. The invaders concluded that the town was abandoned and quietly retreated in disappointment. In honor of the creature that saved Newi from annihilation, the town named their settlement after the great mother rabbit. And from that day, the town was known as Newi. Today in Newi town, the rabbit is not killed or eaten by the natives and is given the respect and gratitude it deserves for its great act of heroism. In the community of Lagua Okwato in Mbise, the Enwe, or monkey, is a protected and revered animal and symbol of the people. In the history of the people of Lagua, the Enwe has not only served as an animal manifestation of the local Arushi, but also a saving grace in times of war. As the story goes, Lagua and a neighboring community had a dispute over a land boundary. The neighboring community then decided to strike by stealth and launch an attack against Lagua. But as they inched towards the town, the invaders had no idea the mistake they were about to make. The neighboring invaders decided to come from the Ofi Arushi, or the Arushi's forest. As they inched in, the Arushi became aware of the invasion, and through its manifestation as the monkey, it began to shout. At once, all of the Enwe rushed to the highest trees in the forest and began to shout until the fighting men of the community were aware of the upcoming attack. This early warning system, or spiritually enhanced siren system, happened again and again in the community's history, safeguarding the people from ambush and sneak attack for hundreds of years. On the other side of this symbiotic relationship with the Enwe, the respect of the Lagua people as a guardian has afforded the monkey certain privileges. When it arrives in the homes of the people of the town, it is given food and drink as an honored guest, and libations are poured in its name as a token of honor. The Enwe is protected from harm by the people, and within the Iwala of the people, or the laws of the land, there are strict prohibitions against harming, eating, or even disrespecting the Enwe. The Enwe is also respected for its intelligence and the capacity to operate like a human being to an extent, as it is believed that the moi of a monkey and the moi of a human being are one, or two different ripples within the same splash of reality. The aura of a monkey and the aura of the human being, according to the Lagua people, is similar. And throughout Igbo land, you'll see an association between primates and people that often sees primates, such as the monkey or orangutan, as teachers or revealers of knowledge more ancient than mankind. In my video, Insibidi Explained, I tell the story of the idiok, an ape-like species that was said to reveal the language of Insibidi to human beings, and thus teach mankind how to do sign language and write. If you're interested in knowing the story as well as more on Insibidi, the link is below. In a very similar situation to Newi, the people of Osokwa and Vusi celebrate the Okwa, or bushfowl, for its heroism and honor an ancient promise made by their ancestors to the bird. In a time before the community's birth, there were three brothers living in the nearby community of Obikabia. These three brothers were Obika, Umoka, and Ikem. During a dispute, Umoka and Ikem teamed up against their brother to chase him out of their home. In exile, Obika was able to assemble an army of mercenaries and launch an attack on his two brothers, Umoka and Ikem. Umoka and Ikem assembled an army of their own and mounted a defense. But after the dust cleared, in a battle for the disputed land, the mercenary force overwhelmed Ikem and Umoka, chasing the two brothers into exile as they retreated. From there, the chase began. Ikem and Umoka ran southwards, away from their brother's vengeful army. But no matter how far they would run, Obika knew exactly where they were headed. Finally, they found a spot to hide, but Obika and his forces remained on their tail. It was then that their saving grace came. An Aqua emerged from the forest and kindly began to cover their footprints with its own. Step by step, the bird covered the tracks of the retreating forces, until Obika could no longer trace the steps of his retreating brothers. When the coast was clear, Ikem and Umoka emerged from the forest to settle in the new land, which gave them refuge, which they named Osokwan Vusi, meaning when they're afraid, they disappear. As a token of their gratitude, they promised to honor the Aqua as a hero, and since the bird and its descendants, and they and their own descendants are one, this respect and gratitude continued so long as the community exists. This community grew prosperous and was able to establish satellite communities of its own. And what should be noted is that in these satellite communities, the Aqua retains the same respect it was promised by the ancestors of the people. And this is how the bushfowl became a sacred bird to the people of Mvosi or Sokwa. Now, as I said in part 1, these relationships of mutual gratitude or the acknowledgement of the personhood of something beyond humanity does not end with animals. There's an ilu made popular by the book Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe that I used in part 1, and I asked for your interpretation of it. The ilu was or a child who washes their hands can eat with the kings. The way I interpret the ilu is fairly simple, and it alludes back to the general philosophy on the relationship people have with each other, and by extension, the relationship people have with things that are beyond humanity, such as spirits, natural features, and animals. Now, for further context on the ilu, in Igbo culture, children and titled men don't eat together, and fathers in a household are served food separately from the wife and children. Now, this isn't strictly enforced anyhow. A child can and regularly does eat with their father, and wives can eat with their husbands as well. But it's often to the discretion of the father. And typically when children eat with their father, they're eating their father's food, as opposed to something that is shared between the two parties. So, for example, when we were younger and we'd want to go eat with my dad, which we did often, we would go eat what he was served after we ate what we were served. Now, in all of these examples, as far as the animals go, you see animals behaving heroically, and for that reason, they're given a hero's honor, the way you would honor a human being that does something similar. And this ties back to the statement I made in part 1 about the idea of personhood. In many of the societies we find ourselves today, things such as honor and gratitude and respect are all privileges of personhood, and they're reserved for things that we consider people, which in most cases is almost exclusively human. One of the fundamental differences between this worldview and our ancestors is that personhood is acknowledged where it makes itself seen, even if it's not from people. What an Ofeke or an inadept would call worship of a river, for example, is actually an Igbo person giving the river praise and thanks. For when the ancestors came to the land that they were in today, the river was already there before them. So it is a respect due, the way a guest would respect their host, or a junior would respect their senior in age. Now, if that host gives you something to drink, the way a river gives you water to drink, you thank them. If the host gives you a place to bathe, again, you thank them. And if you're sick and the host provides medicine, a courteous person would, of course, extend a thank you. Now, if this host has kept everyone in your family alive for hundreds, if not thousands of years, there's a different level of gratitude that is afforded to that host or to that individual. Because the river acts as a giver, it is regarded as a giver. Because a child washes their hands like a titled man, it is regarded as a titled man. Regard is a direct result of your actions and conduct. And in this case, regard can extend beyond humanity because it is regard for the principle of regard. It also goes into why ancestors are held in the regard that they're held in our cosmological worldview. If one is grateful to God for creating them, they also owe a level of gratitude or reverence and respect to their parents for doing the same, and to their ancestors as well, because there's no system in the world where there's a belief in God or the idea of a god that doesn't earn its status because it is the first ancestor. But at the same time, All of the ancestors between yourself and that original principle are also due a level of respect for making your existence possible. Creators are treated as creators. But a key ingredient of this worldview is the idea that things such as honor or gratitude are given wholly in themselves, meaning that their value are not based on the expectation of a "you're welcome." You're saying thanks because it is deserved, not because you expect what you are thanking to respond back to you, or thank you for thanking them. As the Ilu goes, greet the blind and the deaf man when you see him, because if he does not hear you, the sky and the earth can hear you. And that's it. For the full video, check part 1 on sacred animals. The link is below. I'm going to share what people can do once they identify the animal that they are linked to, if they are linked to one at all. But first, I want to give a shout out to the patrons that make this channel possible. If you want to support this channel, join us at patreon.com/TheMedicineShell. Tier patrons have access to an in-house Debia who does readings and is able to identify if you are connected with a particular animal or element of nature, among many other things. Patrons also have access to my full library that I use for my research and a full Igbo calendar for your Google Calendar, which has the 4 market days and 13 moons. Special thanks to Abigail Vasquez, Adaku Utah, Akachi Lamb, Ako Manwokuri, Alejandro Diaz, Amaka Adogun, Amechi Ekugu, Aya Eneli, Carl Severin, C. Nwano, Sessa Salam, Shante Thompson, Chino M, Chukwumanze, Celeste Richmond, Crystal, Daria Nwokolo, Daryl King, Deja, Ekundayo, Ememe, Emeka Oha, Eze Chijoke Ujuku, I Am Chizara, Isioma Orihu, Jess Akon, Christina Benjamin, Kwasi Densu, Lee, Lioness Jade, Liz, Michael, NC Okeke, Nchedochukwu Ezokoli, Ngozi Onoha, Nia, Nick Crenshaw, Nina Nwafia, Namdi, Uzuku, Nume Falak, Nwaka, the Igbo Cyber Shrine, Odinaka, Olise Emeka, Okakpo, Okechukwu, Ebizie, Oshunfemi, Rachel Nwokoro, Raslin, Ehirim, Red Clay Roundup, Ross Jones, Sack Alexander, Sarah Waffle, Sass, Sharika Regina, Stan, Team Carib, Uchi Agweze, Ren Nakara, and Yaya West. Thinking about doing the shout outs all over that Coke style, with the music and everything, where he just shouts out rich people for like 20 minutes. And the whole thing is a jam. I can get an instrumental, so if anybody is interested in hearing that, let me know in the comments. This could either be my best or worst idea all year. So we'll see. Also want to see if the patrons have businesses, so I can just attach and Sons and Sons Limited at the end. But yeah, now when you get a reading, the components of the universe that you share a connection to, or ndu to me, can be revealed, as I said earlier. And this includes an animal, or sometimes several animals, but also sometimes no animal at all, so don't be disappointed. If you're aware of the animals you feel connected to, or perhaps one...
Sit.
You got to what?
Sit.
You want to sit?
Yeah.
Okay, you gonna be quiet? My son decided to join me. Anyways, yeah, if you are aware of the animals that you're connected to, or perhaps you've been saved by one, like in the stories I shared, or maybe one's come to you in a dream and revealed something important, don't forget to show gratitude. For the ones that you're connected to in particular, don't kill them or participate in anything that leads to their death or harm. No, you have to be quiet, okay? You have to be quiet. Or don't participate in anything that leads to their death or their harm. Don't be in a place where they're served as food, and treat them quite literally as you'd like to be treated. You saw in some examples that in the presence of the monkey, communities that owe debts of gratitude to that monkey would pour libations in its honor. If you also have an altar, certain abara can be represented by the animals that they're connected to. So be aware of those animals. If you have questions about certain abara or spirits and the animals they're connected to, you can ask in the comments and I'll try to answer as many as possible. And then, of course, if you're a patron, go ahead and ask. I try to get back as quick as possible. Now, you can use the images of these animals to represent particular abara that they're connected to. And if you're interfacing with one, or if you've decided that one is going to be a part of your spiritual routine or life, then it's advised to abide by the same rules that the communities would apply when dealing with animals connected to their abara, such as Anna with the python, or Amadioha with the ram. Now, on the flip side, there are situations where some of the animals connected to certain Abara are used in sacrifice when dealing with the Abara. So if you were interested in a video on sacrifice or Aja and how that all works or why it's done and why there's a difference as far as not harming the animal in that situation, go ahead and comment below and I can put it up for votes. Again, this is Derek with the Medicine Shell and my son counting in the background, and thank you.